Hello and welcome to Leading Ladies, Past, Present, and Future, an interview podcast produced by Heap Entertainment that champions the stories and careers of women in entrepreneurship and entertainment. I'm Antoinette Westcott, your host, here with my co-host, Renee L. Page.
Hello.
On our show, we speak to women who have trailblazed a path and carved out a space for themselves within industries that don't traditionally afford them a seat at the table. Through these conversations, we hope to inspire listeners like you to pursue the careers you want while making sure you have the right resources and advice for you to succeed. This week, we have joining us Emma Orme. Hi, Emma.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hi, Emma.
Emma
Thanks
is a
for having
Brooklyn-based. Oh, awesome. We're glad to have you.
Yes.
So Emma is a Brooklyn-based producer and performer with a focus on theatrical work. She is a new producing director of Hypokrit Productions, where she is producing Danny Pudi's autobiographical film, Running. She has previously served as the lead director or producer on the podcast Pleasure Machine, which we need to find out more about. The Bold Associate producer, Northern Stage, a video producer for New York Times, and the documentary, The Kleptocrats. Okay. And the artistic producer of VoxLab and live artist residency at Dartmouth College. Wow. Such a resume.
Yeah. Yes.
So I like to start off with some rapid fire questions. So just whatever comes to the top of your head, whatever pops out, we'll just go through them. Okay. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book is the first book that popped into my head is Penin, which is a novel by Vladimir Nabokov. And I remember it being the experience I had when I was done reading it was like of feeling like utter loss, not being able to like commune with those characters any longer. That's the first book that popped in my head, but I have read others that I've loved since.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I found this on a Facebook post and I love it. And I love reading about what everybody posted. And I haven't posted myself, but I have to, because I keep talking about it. What's the number one best investment you made in 2021 under $100?
The best investment I made that was under $100. I'm like currently looking around my room trying to figure that out. In 2021 or in 2022 so far? In 2021.
2021. You've been shopping already in 22.
Wow, already? 5 days in?
Well, I just actually got a new French press, and it's a metal French press, not a glass French press. So I was gonna say that, but it was actually $7 because I got it secondhand. And instead, I'm actually gonna say this. It's maybe not the best purchase. Okay, actually, I know what I'm gonna say. I'm cheating the $100 rule a little bit, but I can't really show you because I'm using it, but I got this beautiful wooden, like standing desk type thing. So you put it on top of a kind of normal desk height. And it has a space for your keyboard and your mouse and your laptop. And it's like very pretty to look at because it's wood. I got it on Etsy and it has saved my back from all of its prior pandemic woes. So I highly recommend spending like at least a few hours of your day standing.
Where did you get it from? Spell it. Etsy?
Etsy, ETSY, which is like an online store for artisans to sell their stuff.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my best purchase.
Okay.
What's your number one advice for self-care?
I think recently what I've been trying to remind myself is that there is enough time, and that I am in control of my own time. And I think that's about reclaiming agency inside of my days and trying to remove myself from this feeling that I am like a victim to work or something, and instead feel like an agent of my time. And I decide when I want to begin work and when I want to end work. And like, of course, obviously, like there are times when I must begin work and there are times when I must end work. But like inside of that I have agency, which I think like just makes me feel more grounded and powerful inside of the way I use time. And that like to take an hour to do yoga or to take 30 minutes to take a walk and listen to a podcast makes the other hours of my day that much more efficient. And so this idea that there isn't enough time, I think, is like a myth that is really counterproductive. So I'm trying to free myself of the time scarcity myth.
I like that.
I do.
Yeah, I'm learning that myself.
Yeah, it's hard. It's
so
very
it's
hard
good for
because
reinforcements.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, what's the first thing you do every morning when you wake up?
The first thing I do every morning when I wake up, when I'm being diligent, is not look at my phone. The first thing I do generally is turn on the hot water to begin to prepare my French press coffee, which I find to be like a very soothing start to every day, because it's a very simple but like regimented process. In order to do it well, you need to follow steps in exactly the same way. And that's kind of like my meditation at the beginning of the day.
I was going to ask later if you meditated.
I don't properly meditate, but coffee is my, yeah.
So speaking of coffee, who's one person you want to have coffee with? If it could be anybody in the world, living or dead.
Wow.
One person I want to have coffee with, living or dead. Anyone in the world. I think because she just passed away, she's on my mind. Bell Hooks.
Oh, okay.
Is an activist and author and organizer who who had a big influence on me when I was in college. And I would love to sit down and sort of try and soak up all of her wisdom. Yeah.
Okay, well then I want to soak up the wisdom that you learned from her.
So I have a question. So Emma,
Go.
you have, since you're so in control of your time.
Well, that's questionable, but
but with all that you have going on, and I love to ask everyone this question, when you get up in the morning, what keeps you from hitting the snooze? Like I hit the snooze button all the time, but what keeps you from hitting the snooze button and just getting up, putting those slippers on and getting your day started? What keeps you going?
I think it's all of the people on the other end of the line, like it's all of the people I work with and all of the people we're telling stories about, and my family and my partner. And, like, I think it's all of the people. I'm a very socially and emotionally motivated person. And so I think it's really like the people that I know are out there counting on me is who keeps me really motivated. Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, this is so tough. I love This American Life which is like a classic, This American Life for long form, like nonfiction storytelling. And I love, there's this podcast called Appearances, which is made by a more indie podcasting company called Mermaid Palace, and it's this podcast is by Sharon Mashihi, and she is Iranian and Jewish, and it's about being in her mid-30s and sort of reconciling her relationship with her mom, her relationship with whether or not she is going to have a kid or wants to have a kid, her relationship with her love life. And it's like what they call truth-based fiction. So it's about her life, but it's she plays all of the characters in the story. So it's like somewhat fictionalized. It's pulled a little bit. It's not documentary. It's not like she sits down and presses record with like her mom. And it's crafted sort of with the precision of a fictional podcast. And then I'm a total sucker for WTF with Mark Maron, his interview podcast, which is, he's kind of abrasive and like kind of, he's very, very, very forward, but in a way that I think actually, sometimes I think is questionable, but like most of the time I actually think elicits. He's relentless when he asks questions, and I think he actually elicits like more honesty out of people than some interviewers do, because he's like not afraid to ask the hard questions. So that's another podcast I love, among so many. Code Switch, and there are, I can't name them all.
Well, I only asked for one, so that's okay. We can keep
Yeah.
going through the whole list of them all. So final question in the rapid fire questions. If you were to switch careers tomorrow, what would you try?
I think I would either become a therapist or a journalist.
Ooh, nice.
Nice.
Are you constantly helping your friends with their problems?
I don't know about that, but I definitely, I just like talking to people about what they're dealing with emotionally, and I enjoy that, and I enjoy like helping people kind of tease out what it is that is like plaguing them on a week by week basis. So I think I would enjoy it, but I think I don't know what it would actually feel like to do that for 8 hours a day. Like I can imagine it's quite emotionally heavy to like really carry that for a lot of people every day.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I worked at a law firm for like a month doing family law. So I was dealing with like a bunch of divorcees and everything. And just the fighting over silverware and like the dog and visitation, for the dog. And my mom bought that picture, so I'm taking it, but it was a gift to me. And it's like, oh my goodness, like,
oh Lord. Yeah,
just crying all the time. Yeah, that I couldn't do family law. It only lasted a month. That's hard. So I imagine being a therapist, listening to this day in and day out takes a toll on you.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to all the therapists out there.
Yeah, seriously. You do great work.
Yeah.
So what got you into being an artist and being in the theater? That's where you started, correct?
Yeah. I think I really can attribute so much of that to my parents and where I went to school. So I went to this school from 3rd through 12th grade, called St. Anne's, which is this small school in Brooklyn, New York, and they don't give grades. They were founded on a kind of radical, like pedagogical mission, which was to try and engage every student for the unique kind of set of neural pathways and like interests and skills that they are and contain, and that like the assigning of numbers and values to people's intellect and skill is like really detrimental to their self-esteem, but also to like the motivation for learning. And I think like in a dream world, this no grade system was set up to motivate learning for the sake of learning, and that I think that mission was really successful with me. Like I do feel like I was empowered to like really invest in the things that I loved, and like invest a little bit less in trigonometry, and like and that there was a lot of respect for and a lot of like there were a lot of teachers who really saw you and what you were kind of where your skills lay and where your strengths lay. And it's also a school that really like valued arts as highly as academics. So when I was in 3rd grade, I was in a classroom production of Gilgamesh, which is an ancient Mesopotamian story, and I played Gilgamesh. So I played like a you know, like an ancient king at the age of 8. And I remember my crown fell off and I got a big laugh. And then the way I like reapplied the crown, I got another big laugh. And I was like, this feels sort of good to make people laugh. So there was definitely like discovering.
And the actor was born.
Yeah, exactly. There was that. And then there was also like, I was a big singer. And I am still a singer. And I was in a very serious professional children's chorus growing up. I rehearsed like hours and hours and hours a week. And I think what I learned quickly between that chorus and like my parents bringing a lot of art into my life and the school caring a lot about art was how good the community is inside of art. Like, I feel like in addition to discovering early that I like had something to say and that art was a really good way of releasing that, either in the form of song or in the form of a play, that I also, the people who were attracted to art making were people I loved, and the fact that art making is a space that kind of demands vulnerability from you was like, so I think even if I couldn't put words to it, was like so legible to me at a young age. And I was like, well, why would I participate in any of the things where we're not being 100% ourselves, when in this space we seemingly are bringing like at least 99% of ourselves, and the relationships I'm forming here are like seem more authentic and more special and deeper. And the kind of collaborative act of making is like, I think, forges relationships unlike any other. And I think that's like what I'm addicted to, is the collaboration. And like the unusual nature of a lot of people who are in the arts. I think there's such an interesting world of people who make art that I want to know all of them and work with all of them.
Yeah, everyone's unique and has such a interesting approach to everything. And we're just special. Everyone's got their own craziness. So have you been in any musicals, being a singer as well?
I was never really attracted to musicals. Like, I don't feel like the same caliber. I think the feeling I had when I was younger, and that's starting to evolve, was that the serious acting was not happening inside of musicals, and the serious singing was not happening inside of musicals. It was like some combination of the two that compromised both. And I was not a dancer. I'll say that. This is not my number one skill. So I was never.
Okay, well, if we combine the both of us, I'll do the dancing and you do the singing, and then we can do a musical. Perfect,
in our yellow outfits. Yeah, I was more so doing straight plays, plays with no music, or plays that are not musicals, or I was doing the genre of work that is called plays with music, that are are a bit more of the kind of energy of a straight play, but have music in them. But the music generally doesn't contain a lot of like plot. Like in musicals, there's a lot of like, I am going to love him for the rest of my life, and like there's a lot of information contained inside of the songs, and like the songs move the plot forwards. Whereas in plays with music, sometimes they add texture to the play, or they add an emotional kind of energy to the play, but they don't move the story forward. So long story short, I have been in musicals, but they are not the genre of work that and the people who perform musicals, the musical theater performers that are professional and on Broadway or on touring companies are so exquisitely and specifically masterful in the art of musical theater performing, which is an art in and of itself. And I was not trained to be a musical theater performer. I was trained to be a classical singer, really, and a straight actor. So
can it not, you couldn't, it doesn't transfer over the skill set?
It definitely has. And it's allowed for me to participate in some really interesting theater that I wouldn't have if I didn't have singing skill. But I definitely I wasn't trained to sing in the style of kind of more classic musical theater of like belting. That's not really my singing style. So my voice is suited more so to like Once the musical, or like Hadestown, or musicals where the music is more kind of folk based and not so not as like brassy like Hairspray, or like I don't know, Mamma Mia. Yeah, but the skills have transferred and have really, like, singing really benefited me a lot when I was acting more consistently. Singing was always the special skill that, like, I feel like singing is always what got me cast in some ways, even if I wasn't auditioning for straight musicals. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I got deterred. What was the word? I don't know what the right word is, but I got scared with getting into, theater because, I did it in high school and everything. And then when I got to college, I went to, I took the theater, 101. And the first play that they did was a musical, Hello, Dolly. And since I can't sing, I was like, is this all it is just musicals? I'm like, I will never get casted. I will always be just the runt walking around on stage or doing the curtains and stuff. I will never get an opportunity. So it took a long time to find out that wasn't the case. So I got out of acting because that just, like, I was discouraged. I didn't, I thought that was all that there was.
I think that's the case for many people, that their high schools and colleges predominantly did musical theater. And I was just like lucky in that my high school mostly did not do musical theater, and my college did a kind of balance of the two. But college was really the first time I ever did a real musical. Like, I was in the ensemble of Hairspray when I was a freshman. And I was like, oh, this is a whole nother genre and ball game. But yeah, I'm sorry you had that experience, because I think it is common that's like what most educational institutions are doing theatrically is musical theater.
Did you have to get because you said you was a singer, did you have to get singing coach and things like that to do the musical?
Yeah. When I grew up in this chorus, which kind of fosters a very particular kind of singing where the intent is to blend with, 50 other voices. So it's less about conceiving of some sort of unique sound of your own and more about your listening skill and musicianship, which was super, super, super valuable. But then when I got older and like after I went through puberty, my voice sort of started to change. And it got bigger. Like, it was a thinner voice and an airier voice. And then when I went through puberty, it started to kind of like fill out, and I could sing higher, and all of a sudden I was making more sound. And at that point I started going to a voice teacher named Fred, who is an incredible instructor, and we were working on mostly classical voice. So I was singing like opera, like arias, and there was a point at which I considered applying to conservatory instead of to classical singing conservatory instead of a liberal arts college. But I had this moment. At a certain point, I was like, I don't want to be an opera singer. I don't like opera enough. That is the path generally for this kind of singing. And I'm interested in too many things. So I need to go to a college where they support you doing too many things.
Now, would you be able to pleasure us and give us like a little sample? Or
oh gosh.
You knew that was coming.
No, I didn't. It's like a classical. I mean, I something like that in so long. Okay, I guess we'll see what comes out. Like Italian. I feel like my recording is gonna go wacko. Like Italian kind of style classical. The first thing that came to my mind is Oh mio bambino, caro, mi piaceva.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my God, that was beautiful. Oh my God, goodness.
I wasn't
Look,
expecting that at all.
I wasn't
Wow.
expecting that either.
I wasn't expecting it either, but a ghost came and reminded me of my former voice.
Wow. That was
Well,
beautiful.
Antoinette, so you could have taken lessons and did theater. I mean, what was it, Broadway with the voice coach, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But like, again, not being from New York or Los Angeles, like these are all things that you don't know until you know. So like, I didn't know there was such thing as a vocal coach. Like I had did chorus also she's like 8th grade or whatever. And I sound like a cat, like a dog, like the dog, but they're, like it's my friends in high school used to turn up the radio. So I would sing and they would just laugh at me.
No.
So yeah,
Wow.
I should not be singing in the shower.
Oh yeah, that's when I do it. But that was beautiful, Emma. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
It was.
Woo!
Yeah. Blew me away.
Yes.
Yes, I think you're ready.
Okay.
So what kind? Go ahead.
No. I definitely would need a vocal coach, right?
I think everyone can, I sort
Okay.
of believe that unless you're tone deaf,
Okay.
everyone can learn to sing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you sure you're tone deaf?
Yeah. No, I would be like,
well,
what?
I think I harmonize, but no one else does.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't sing.
You know
no.
what? As long as you can find the music in you, doesn't matter what anyone else says.
True.
That's my little message for you.
Okay.
Well, how did you get into producing then? If you were, or was that
yes.
just like a natural transition?
Yeah. So for the first 4-ish years following graduating, I grew up in New York City, went up to Dartmouth College for my college for my education there, and then I came back to Brooklyn somewhat immediately because I knew I wanted to do theater.
Okay.
And at that point, right out of college, the feeling I had was I wanted to try and pursue acting in theater. And so I went to Williamstown Theater Festival, which is this wild and energetic summer theater festival, exactly what it sounds like, in Williamstown, Massachusetts, where New York City theater kind of displaces itself to this like beautiful setting amidst the mountains, and hundreds of people get together and make theater for 8 weeks. And on the main stage of the shows are, starring Marissa Tomei and like other, huge stars, and their kind of Broadway, off-Broadway caliber shows. And then on like the second stage, of the festival is a whole series of plays by young artists. So they have programs for younger artists. Those are now all under construction because there was a lot of pushback against them during the pandemic, because there's a lot of unpaid labor that happens during these fellowships and internships, as is familiar to, I think, all of us who are in the arts. And so I was an apprentice, it's called an acting apprentice at that festival. And I had a lot of good luck with the casting that summer. And had the good fortune of performing for the majority of the summer, which is not always your experience as an acting apprentice, despite the name of the program. And I think that gave me the sort of confidence, because it felt like it was New York City adjacent. So that gave me the confidence to step into New York City and say, I am going to do this thing. So anyways, long story short, I moved to New York City. I was acting for a number of years. I had a great time acting and found a really robust community of people looking to make work like the work I was interested in. But I never really aggressively attacked the audition circuit. And I never really aggressively attacked the representation the search for an agent and a manager. I was really making work with people who had seen me in something or knew me already, and I was being invited to audition, or I was being just offered roles. And I think on some level I was fighting a fear, and like putting myself out there in the way that I think you really have to as an actor to get seen beyond your circle. And I also was fighting this, like, I guess this kind of recurring feeling inside of rehearsal rooms where I was like really concerned with how the process was organized. And I wanted to know why the director chose the set that they did. And I wanted to know why the breaks were being taken at 1:05 and not 1:15. And
Right.
I wanted to like, and all of a sudden I sort of like, not all of a sudden, like gradually I noted in myself like an interest in the bigger picture. And also like theater is a very underfunded form. And so there is a lot of time spent where the artists involved in the project are making very, very, very little money in what they're doing. And so I think like that the pay needs to increase, and like that conversation is happening and has been happening through the pandemic, but simultaneously the respect involved in the theater making process, I think, has to be like at an all-time high, and the care for the artists involved has to be at an all-time high, because you're not making a ton of money. So the least that we can do as collaborators is really take care of each other. And so I guess I just started to feel very strongly about that, having been inside of so many processes as an actor. And a friend of mine named Katie Lindsay, who's a theater director, was like, I'm directing this new musical. Speaking of musicals, I am directing this brand new musical. It's called Red Emma and the Mad Monk. Your name has nothing to do with what I'm asking you, but will you consider producing this? Like, I keep hearing you saying you're interested and I think you'd be good at it. Why don't you do it? And I was like, oh God, I don't know. I have no experience. I don't know where to begin. And Katie was like, well, look, I have experience producing, the composer has experience producing, the playwright has experience producing. So you'll be the lead producer, but we will help you. We will orient you as to like what it is that this job entails. And I think the hardest thing the first time around is you have no capacity for anticipatory thinking. Because if you've never done the thing before, it's harder to anticipate. You know, if you've produced a play 10 times, you know that early in the process, you need to have a conversation with the actors union and tell them that this is happening and for how many weeks, and apply for, you know, a certain union level of performance. Yep. And get approval. And if you've never done it before, then you probably don't know you're supposed to do that. You wait till the last minute, you apply at the last minute, you have no track record as you know, so there are things that like you over time, you know, okay, there are certain formulas to processes like this. These things need to happen at certain junctures in every process. The way they happen is different for every show, but I think that there are certain things that are unchanging from show to show. So I didn't have a lot of that anticipatory skill set, but I learned a lot on the fly, and I love learning as I work. It's like the most, I think, thrilling kind of the way of working for me. And sometimes when I find myself on a job where I'm not learning constantly, I get bored very quickly. And so I produced this musical, and the New York Times gave it a critic's pick, and it was like a thrilling experience because it was a group of young artists who were making this new ambitious thing, and everyone I think who participated in it had a really good time and was really, really proud of it. And I loved it. I loved the experience of producing. I loved being the kind of line of communication between so many people. I loved having the opportunity to be thoughtful about how the show is marketed to the world. I loved having the opportunity to structure, to like assert what I believe was like right and wrong and how you use artists' time. Deciding that we were going to, like, one of the big decisions I feel like I made per the counsel of a producer friend of mine who's older than me, Caroline Gart, shout out. She's so amazing. She basically advised that you try and make the totality of your budget without counting on box office. So she was like, you should have, if your budget is $35,000, you need to earn $35,000 in generally like raised income. So like generally through fundraising. And you shouldn't be counting on box office to pay any of your fundamental expenses. And so we approached the budget that way. And as a result, we did make a bunch of money on box office. And as a result, we had surplus funds, and we were able to take those surplus funds and divide them and pay all of the artists more than
that's fantastic.
That is fantastic.
So that was a really rewarding experience and has not really happened again since. I mean, I think that was like particularly lucky, but I also
that's the way we want it to happen.
Yes,
totally. And totally. And I also think that like I was very lucky to be working with lead artists who felt that the money should go back to the artists. And there was such a robust experience of community there, and I was hooked, and I think that the rest is history.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, being artists, like you're saying, and how we generally work for free for a while. What's your side hustle? What do you do to pay the bills? Like, what's your thing, or how many things do you have?
For a while I was so right now I kept producing and acting simultaneously, and that was kind of awesome and insane. And then the pandemic hit, live theater came to an absolute dead halt, and I pivoted to working on digital work of various varieties. Found the digital theater that was happening incredibly uninspiring, so I sort of like pivoted my attention to different mediums that are built to live digitally, like film and podcasts. And I started working on my first podcast, which I can tell you more about, with Pleasure Machine. And then
we got to talk about that next.
Yeah. And about 6 months or so after I started working on that, I was approached by a director that I knew at the time as a theater director who I'd heard her name many times. I'd always wanted to meet her. Her name is Arpita Mukherjee. She emailed me and said, a friend of mine recommended you. We are looking to hire a full-time producing director for my company. It's our very first full-time hire, but we have a lot of TV and film offers on our plate, and we're about to grow because of that. And so for the first time, we have the financial capacity and really like the operational need to hire someone full time. So I was hesitant to take full-time work because I had other projects still in the midst. I was still running the arts residency. I was working on this podcast, but we were still in the midst of the pandemic. I was really inspired by Arpita and by her inclination towards building out this company to be so hybrid across mediums and make theater and film and TV. And I also felt privately for myself, I was like, I think it would be very healthy for me to grow beyond theater, because while it is kind of like my first love, and I think ultimately that the art form that I feel most strongly about, it's also really, as I said, underfunded industry. So it's really hard to make money. It's really, really hard to make a living.
Yeah.
And obviously there is more money in film. So, I mean, not, it takes time to get there, but there is more of it. And so I decided to take on this full-time job. So now, like, you're meeting me right now in a moment where in a kind of new phase of my life, where I have a full-time job that is the thing I want to be doing. Like, I have a full-time job as a producer. But
congratulations, that's amazing.
Congratulations.
It sounds like you're on your way to making it, or you made it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a constantly evolving equilibrium. I'm like, occasionally I'm like, oh, I'm not meant to be in a full-time job, and then other times I feel quite grateful and I feel grateful for the opportunity to I'm not really slowing down because the full-time job is very busy, but I am narrowing my focus to one thing, which I think is very healthy for me, because my instinct is always kind of to do too much at once. And I was really sick of the feeling of like being totally stretched. But prior to this job, my money jobs were grant writing, and some theater administration stuff. Like, so I had managed to get some part-time work and on the fundraising side of things, on the producing side of things at various arts organizations. And early on, I worked at the New York Times for a year, like a year out of school, as a video producer. And through that, I made relationships with a couple people who hired me again for various kind of like short-term projects. But basically up until about 6 months ago, for 4 or 5 years, I was consistently living inside of a patchwork of jobs. So like a 10-hour job here, a 10-hour a week job here. I tried at a certain point to take jobs that that allowed me to work from anywhere, even before the pandemic. So when the pandemic actually started, I was fortunately already set up with jobs that were meant to be done from my computer. So that's my job story.
So I saw a trailer of Running, right? That is Running. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Just the artistry in that, like I watched it like 3, 4, 5 times. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh, good.
Running, that and it makes sense now after speaking with you. Just the thought, the artistry that was in it, like from when he was riding and he had this box. It was just so just thinking outside, because I'm one that likes to think outside the box, and just the way that it was put together, and just the message, the little boy in the bag, and just everything put together, the lighting, just it was perfect. Like, please talk about it.
It's so exciting to hear you say that.
Yes, please talk about it.
I mean, shout out to Joel, who is somewhere behind the scenes now, and is the reason I'm on this podcast. But Joel was the first AD, and also like secretly, like my associate producer or whatever. I think he earns. He gets all the titles on this one. But he Running is I'll tell you, I'll give you the kind of log line, but Running is an autobiographical experimental film written by and starring Danny Pudi, who I don't know if you've watched Community or Mythic Quest, but those are 2 shows that I've learned since working with Danny have an unbelievable fan base, especially Community. And the film is about so basically when he was a young kid, his father left the home, and he didn't have much of a relationship with his father until he had a son himself. And as he was starting to kind of build this relationship anew, he saw his dad, a number of times over the time that elapsed between when he was a kid and when he was became a father himself. But he started to forge this relationship with his father, and then his father passed away about a couple years into reconceiving of that relationship. And so the film is a journey that Danny is prompted to go on by his son, wherein he is trying to put together a story of the father he didn't know so well. And along the way, he is engaging his mom, his dad's former roommate, his dad's former coworker, and trying to simultaneously soak up all of these stories of his father and kind of sort through his own grief. And he at many points in the film is sort of racing to find answers of who he is and where he comes from and what his father's story is. But I think the lesson he learns along the way is that to ask these questions is the most important thing. The answers are less important, but to be curious and make yourself vulnerable enough to like engage a past that you're not so familiar with is kind of the most important journey you could go on. And it's also sort of a challenge to Danny to engage this grief and this kind of darkness. And you'll see in this film, and you also, immediately when you meet him in real life, he is like the most playful, exuberant, positive person you could possibly encounter. And this is a hard and sad and vulnerable and important and complicated story. And so for him to challenge himself to go to that place is very meaningful. And Arpita Mukherjee, who runs Hypokrit Productions, where I'm the producing director, is the director of the film.
Okay, it was extraordinary. Yeah. Like, now, was it supposed to be, because I'm looking at something else of yours called Pleasure Machine, but with running, I think the son said, "Tell me a funny story about your dad." Was that
exactly
meant to be kind of like a comic relief, or just the son's innocent, like, "Well, Dad, tell me a funny story about your father"? And he's sitting there looking at him, looking at the box, and then he's like, "What's in the box?" Like just that shift is like, wow. So answer, please.
Yeah. I think you picked up on exactly the kind of energetic shift that kicks off the whole film.
Yes.
I think like the film begins and you think you are being dropped inside of a quotidian, everyday interaction between Danny and his son, or his son, who is clearly like very inquisitive and asks a lot of questions, is asking a lot of questions. And then the questions start to be about his identity, the son's identity, and Danny's identity, and who is Danny, and where does he come from, and where's his father, and and then he asks this question, which I think just the prompt sends Danny into this whole journey of wanting to find this funny story for his son, but the journey becomes something so much bigger than that. Like the prompt is to find the funny story, and then the journey becomes a reconciliation with the complexity of self and family and grief and time and all of the big hard things.
It just had all
so
that
spoiler
up and like
what?
Oh, she gonna give us a spoiler? No, I was just
no.
It was just so, it was just like, oh my goodness, like so well put together. Just it was just very well, just compliments.
Oh, good. I'm
really,
I mean, all the credit there goes to Arpita and Kabir, our editor, and Sten Tadashi Olsen, our DP, who has such artistry in the work that he does. And I know that I've frozen. Let me turn off my camera and turn it back on. There we go. And then of course, like the incredible crew and production designer and costume designer and all of the artists that made this film possible. But the artistry I think you're seeing in the trailer is really a mind meld of Danny and Kabir and Arpita and Stan, and Evan, our composer, and Sarah, our colorist. And
it was just,
I'm glad that it struck you. So
yeah.
And Joel,
I got the feeling that it was the boy, his son is him asking his dad, like that's really him and what he wants to find out, because he wants to find out who he is.
Yeah.
So he's on this journey.
That read of it.
And was there a boy in the back seat?
Yeah, it was the son. It was the son, because he was like, "What's in the box?" And I was like, "Oh."
There was a voice. I don't think I saw a person.
Yeah, because I remember him. He was like, "What's in the box?" I remember because it was a box sitting there. I mean, because I've been looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it was a box.
That's up to the viewer. I mean, he is in the back seat, and we don't get to see him because of various things, but he is there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So maybe my mind went. That's good, because I'm seeing.
I mean, that's the hope.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. It was okay.
Yeah.
So now, also, I was excited about, and I'm looking on your Instagram, and it says Pleasure Machine. It's a 9-episode audio thriller, and it collides with Sophie Treadwell's expressionist drama, Machinal, with Adrian. What's that?
Yeah.
Right. So pleasure, activism, if I'm saying it correctly. But I was intrigued and enthralled by that. So please, I mean, speak about that. I mean, unless I overjumped Antoinette, because I know Antoinette had a question, but I'm just excited about your work. So
no, go for it.
Yeah. So Pleasure Machine is a project I started before I started working with Hypokrit. It was, it was a freelance, one of my kind of many independent producing projects. And Pleasure Machine is, as you said, a 9-episode audio thriller. Or I think for folks who listen to podcasts, fictional podcasts will mean, or narrative podcasts will mean a lot to them. For people who don't, audio thriller seems to mean more to them. About an artist who is trying to hold on to their integrity and relationships under the pressures of capitalism. And spoiler alert, doesn't go so well. And it really, to zoom back out a little bit, this director named Tara Elliott came to me, and she was really obsessed with these two texts, which is Machinal, the Sophie Treadwell play that is I talk about in that Instagram post, and Pleasure Activism, which is a book of essays written by and compiled by Adrienne Maree Brown, who's a very successful and notable activist and organizer and social justice thinker. And basically Tara was feeling really oppressed by the pandemic, as we all were, and feeling like her body had been rendered completely irrelevant. It was both rendered irrelevant and like was rendered a kind of site of infection and like violence, and it felt like our bodies were kind of they were relegated to being something that was kept inside and away from everyone else. And so Tara was feeling like the theater work that was happening during the pandemic was not engaging her physical body the way that like normal theater does, where like you have to walk to the theater and you sit in the seat and you are next to 100 other bodies and they're breathing and laughing and crying next to you, and all of a sudden it's like it's a physical experience consuming the theater. And she was having that experience only when listening to podcasts during the pandemic. She was feeling like that was sort of like engaging her more than the digital theater that was happening. And Adrienne Maree Brown's whole philosophy of pleasure activism is essentially that in order for us to make change in the world, it has to be a pleasurable experience. So like one of the kind of most radical things you can do for yourself, and also she's a Black queer woman who's writing primarily for a Black queer audience. And so these tools are really for that audience first and foremost, but she's basically offering the guidance that in order to live radically and make change, that you yourself need to find a pleasure practice for yourself.
Accept yourself, accept who you are.
Yeah, accept yourself, take care of your body, listen to your body. And she is very kind of somatically focused, just like she is very physically focused. So she encourages a lot of meditation and breathing exercises and stretching and exercises that are intended to kind of get you in touch with what your body is trying to tell you. Because often we store stress in our body, we store anxiety in our body, we store hunger in our body, we store anger in our body, and like it's all there if you pay attention. Anyway, so and then Machinal is about this woman who is oppressed in the early 1900s, and we wanted to put the two pieces into conversation with each other. And a question we sort of asked ourselves was like, what would have happened to this lead character in Machinal, who is this oppressed woman who basically is driven to kill her husband because she feels so trapped inside of these like patriarchal capitalistic structures. And what happens if you give this character the liberatory practices of Adrienne Maree Brown? And we gathered a group of 3 writers together, put these 2 texts in the space, and asked these big questions about how to maintain a sense of freedom and agency and artistry inside of all of these systems. And we traveled far, far, far away from this play Machinal and landed at this story about this sound artist who gets an offer from a big corporation to basically license all of her work. And it makes her feel like they have this instinct, sorry, they use they, them pronouns. They have this instinct that this is not going to align with their values, but they're in a position where they really need money. They're like, there are some familial circumstances that make it such that they really need this cash. And so they sign the deal, and I guess I shouldn't say so much, but their instincts were not wrong. And so Pleasure Machine is 9 episodes. Right now it's finishing up its run on Colt Core, which is the company we worked with to produce it. COLTCOEUR.org, and it's available for behind a consumer pay platform right now, but come late next year it will be available more widely on Spotify and all of the other apps. But right now this has been kind of like a limited release, and then we're going to do a wider release later in 2020
until the 5th. So we have until the 15th, right?
Yeah, you have until the 15th to buy I think it's actually the 18th now, but it's mid-January is basically when we're no longer going to have the podcast on sale.
Okay. So speaking of podcasts, I know if I can make mention, I'm just excited about everything that you're doing, Emma. Speaking of podcasts, you have your own podcast, right?
Me?
Yes. Don't you have a podcast? Or this is the platform
it's this one.
It's
this is the podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
I produced this and was very, very involved in the crafting of the story, but it's not like a podcast of this variety where it's not an interview-based podcast. It's a fictional podcast, so it's it's more similar to a TV show.
It's the new radio.
The new radio. Yes. So I guess that's our homework that Antoinette and I will sit here and
you gotta go listen to it.
Yeah, Antoinette is your treat with the wine. As we watch this. So
that's after the 12-week year.
So no, we got to do this before the 15th. So it's your treat.
Oh, thank you, Rose. Thank you.
With a bottle of wine, right? Yeah, this would be great with a bottle. Watch this with a bottle of wine.
Yeah,
it's just a listening experience, but do listen with a bottle of wine.
Yes.
How long are the episodes?
They're like 20 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
They're pretty short.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well,
and I've heard from friends that they're very binge worthy. So it's like we were releasing it kind of progressively, and then I think I had friends who waited for all 9 episods to be out to then start to listen because they knew they would want to.
Yeah, I think I would have done that too. I'm like, I gotta get it over with.
So, and before we wrap up, I just want to say I forgot to tell everyone how they can watch Running, which is obviously the other big project.
I didn't think it was released yet.
It's not, but you can get your tickets now for this. We're doing a limited showing. It's actually weirdly similar to how the podcast release worked, even though these are 2 completely distinct operations. But we are doing a very limited showing of it on a streaming platform called Stellar from January 22nd to February 26th. And you can get tickets on Hypokrit's website. So that's HYPOKRITNYC.org. You can probably just Google Hypokrit Running Danny, and you'll probably find tickets. And
wherever else we can find you, and how we can get in touch with you. For producing a play or film.
Yes.
Yeah,
you can find me at Emma Orme on Instagram. I have a Twitter, but I don't really use it. So if you DM me there, it might sit in my DMs for a little bit before you get a response. So Instagram is probably your best bet. yeah, that's
Awesome.
it at Emma Orme, EMMAORME.
Orme,
and you
not Orme.
Orme. Not Orme, not Orme. Orme.
I'm sure you were teased a lot as a child about
Or
that.
me, Emmy, or me. I love
I
it.
actually think I was saved a lot of it. Was mostly I kind of liked all the varieties. I think it's funny because to me it seems like, oh, of course you would pronounce it Orme, but so I think it's always funny when people call it like Orme, which to me sounds like Hermes, but obviously that's not what it sounds like.
Orme.
Exactly.
Herme. Well, I really thank you for being here and sharing all your wonderful insight there. You have so much more to share, and I would love to learn more, but we just don't have the time.
I know.
And we don't want to hold you up.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and I hope I didn't blab on too much. I know I'm a bit long-winded.
No, it's insightful. It's insightful. Our listeners, if they're inspiring, especially the younger people that's coming behind us, it's like you give them hope for everything. A singer, an actress, and a producer, like your experience. Like you didn't have any experience, but you got experience going through the experience, if that makes sense. Yeah. But you give hope to those that's coming behind you and me. So it's very educational and informative. So I want to thank you. You got my juices flowing because I'm always thinking. So
before I close, just one last question, because Renee just reminded me, since we do like to, thank you for being our leading lady today. We want to promote our new leading ladies, the future generation. So what's something that you wish you had learned along the way when you were younger that you know now that you would either tell someone just starting out, or what you would a piece of advice that you would have told yourself when you were younger?
Yes.
So many, but I think no question is too stupid. And I really mean that. I think that one of the biggest challenges you fight as a young person in this industry is imposter syndrome, and the assumption that everyone who has more experience than you knows all of the answers, and you don't, because you haven't done it for enough time. And the truth is that either you and that more experienced person are actually on a more even playing field than you think, because we're all out here learning all the time and we're all out here improvising all the time. Or if they do know more than you about the thing, then in order to be a responsible and more capable participant in the thing you're doing, you need to know the answers to your questions. So ask the questions, because it doesn't, I think the thing I get really stuck in is this idea that it makes me look bad if I don't know the answer to a thing. But I think what looks worse is if you don't ask the question and you make a misstep that you could have avoided by asking the question. So I think give yourself the grace of asking questions when you have them, and trust that they are good questions, they are valid, and they should be answered. Respect yourself. If you feel in your body that you are being disrespected, you listen and either have a conversation with that person or observe that the situation is not going to change, and go put yourself in a situation where you will be respected like you should be. And there is not a point in your path in this industry at which you start to deserve respect. You deserve respect from the moment you begin. So don't feel like that's something you have to earn. It's something you've earned just by existing. So that's the other thing I'd say is respect yourself and demand the respect you deserve.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That's good reaffirmation, or whatever the word is, to confirm, for a lot of people, including myself. So thank you.
Same. I have to tell myself this every day.
Okay. Well, thanks to all of you for tuning into the podcast this week. For more of our content, you can follow us on our social media at HeepEnt. That's HEEP And if you have feedback, suggestions, questions, collab pitches, or anything you want to tell us, reach out to our team at heapent@gmail.com. Until next time, stay tuned. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you for having me.